So, how was your week? Was it okay? Did you have any moments during this past week that brought you some hope and a little bit of joy? Did you have any moments this week that kind of cut at your heart and made you doubt yourself, maybe even God? I know that when each one of you walks through the front door of our church, whether it's here or on a Thursday night, or maybe those of you who are watching us from wherever you are, I mean, each one of you has a ton of baggage. And whatever you went through this past week, you bring it in here and may or may not receive some hope and goodness from what you hear in the church and feel. You know, sometimes you have that celebration moment that you had during the week and you just want to hold on to that moment forever. And then there's times when life just kind of cuts at the very heart and soul of who you are. And you come in here and you're a little bit down and maybe you even doubt the goodness and the grace of God. I was thinking of this past week, and you have your past week and I have my past week. I remember how last Sunday in church, if you were here or listened on your computer, wherever, and when Lenny sang God Bless the USA, you could just see people just kind of lifted out of their chairs. It just was a song of hope and goodness and inspiration. And then the very next day is the horror of Highland Park. And boy, if that doesn't cut at the heart and soul of who you are as a person, nothing could. And I spent a couple of days in Arizona with Miles' dad, my son Aaron. And he goes, Dad, you're supposed to be here and the phone is ringing all the time. And I said, yeah, it's everybody calling me to wish you the best and they're praying for you. So it's your fault that the phone is ringing, not mine. And then, of course, there's the ever-present story of Ukraine. It's worse than ever. They're going to destroy that country. And how can one person, how can so few do damage to so many? And so what do you do in the midst of all that? Let's have a car wash. Let's go play bingo with a whole bunch of people we don't even know. Is that going to fix it? No. But it gives us a small sense of purpose, like instead of just sitting here doing nothing, we at least care about the few people that we can touch. Isn't it crazy how sometimes when things are going south, you kind of dance in the rain? Maybe you find out you have cancer. What do? You go plant some flowers. Why not? There's hope in that. Or a nation is being destroyed and you wash your car and you play bingo. On the surface, it seems silly, but it's not. Because all we can do is do what we can to make a little bit of a difference and walk out the door knowing that at least we care and there's a bond between us. I've thought about this a lot, that, each one of us is different and unique. But it seems to me that in light of all this stuff going on, whether it's something personal in your life or in the country or whatever, that each one of us needs to have a core. We need to have an essence. We need to have a foundation. We need to have a place where we can go to receive a modicum of hope to give us the strength to face tomorrow. That's who we are. It's what we need. A core. Something that holds us together in our humanity. I don't think there's any passage that captures the essence of the gospel more than the gospel lesson for today. In fact, I know Kenny a few weeks ago in his sermon when I was gone talked about this same passage. So this teacher of the law, and he's out to get Jesus. And he says, Jesus, how do I get into heaven? And Jesus said, you know the answer. Love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. Then he says, well, Jesus, who's my neighbor? And then he tells the story of the Good Samaritan. The Levite, who's busy and self-important, pastors like me. They walk by the guy on the side of the road who's hurting, and they just walk on by because they're too busy and too important. The same happened with the Levite. He sees the guy hurt, and he walks by. Then there's a Samaritan, and the Jews had no use for Samaritans. And what does he do? Puts him on his horse, takes him to a place and brings him healing. And then Jesus says, well, who in this story was kind? And he says, well, the Samaritan. And Jesus says, go and do likewise. That's how you get into heaven. And that's our calling, to be that good Samaritan. That's why we have the love bucket here. That's why we pay our bills. That's why we play bingo. That's why we cut the grass. We do all that because we are called when we leave this place to be a good Samaritan unto somebody else. Sometimes it makes you realize that there's God's all around us and we don't notice. The other day, the same 4 gentlemen who have been cutting our grass for 30 years, they came here. And I was just thinking about life and God and the Spirit, and so I love to watch people work. I'd rather do that than work myself. So I just went out there. And by the way, we don't speak the same language, but we are bilingual because I know how to say thank you and beer in Spanish, and that's good enough to get through. But I just went out there and I watched this team work. And I watched how they care about our property. I watched their dedication. I just looked in their eyes and I saw their spirit. And I realized, I'm not sure how it is with you and your job. I went to school for a lot of years with books about God and the church and what it means to be a Lutheran. And then I realized that in life, there's only one book that really counts. And that's the book called Daily Life. Because it's in daily life that we discover what's important and what's not. It's in daily life that we see our humanity and the humanity of others and the spirit that binds us all together. So this morning I go home to check on my family and I come back here to make sure things are ready at the church. And there's a teeny weeny little frog in the parking lot. I couldn't tell whether he was alive or dead. And so I touched him and I picked him up and I put him in the grass. And when I put him in the grass, it's like he kind of came to life and he started hopping around. He said, well, yeah, I am Lutheran. I'm glad you helped me. You know, it's kind of nice. And I realized that's what we're kind of called to do every day. Maybe it takes somebody who's struggling and you just pick them up and hold that person in the palm of your hand. You put them in the grass, a place of new life, and maybe a little bit of skipping the step comes back. And then just before I came in the door, there was a butterfly. And he landed on the plant where the Ukrainian flag and the American flag fly together. And I was reminded once again, in a small little thing, that there is always hope. And sometimes that hope is easily buried, but it's always there. And that's the gift that gives us the courage to face tomorrow. Amen. If you're able to, please.